Good afternoon, and thank you for Zooming. It is true that in the Child Study Center, most studies regard young children. However, once you are old, you don't stop being somebody's child. And this is related to my topic of research, and that is adult, highly dependent children. And specifically, the trajectory of highly dependent adult children from adolescence to adulthood. The phenomenon of highly dependent adult children got many names: hikikomori, entitlement disorder, and so on. Throughout this lecture, I'm going to use the term failure to launch, which is a term based on a silly old movie. I'm using it not as a derogatory term, but because many patients use it, and after all, the abbreviation FTL is much shorter than just saying highly dependent adult children who live with their parents, and so on and so on. The key criteria of failure to launch are quite straightforward. The individual has to be over the age of 18, live with parents or by the support of their parents, not being employed in a gainful job, and not being enrolled in any kind of an education program, vocational training, and so on. In addition, there's these kind of exclusion criteria. For example, somebody who has a physical condition cannot work is not a failure to launch, and similarly, a mental condition that does not allow one to work is not a failure to launch. And finally, being addicted to a substance does not mean that you're a failure to launch. Before we begin to understand the problem, it is worth to pause and try to see if this is a big enough of a thing to bother about. So, in the US, there are about 128 million families. And studies from Japan show that about 0.5% of the households to 1% have an FTL child. Thus, in the US, there may be between 500,000 to 1 million individuals with FTL. And from a rough estimation, these individuals may represent a $25 billion lost in tax revenue yearly, as they do not generate any income. Again, just for estimation, this map shows cities that have less inhabitants than 500,000 to 1 million individuals. So think about it this way: there are more individuals who kind of quote unquote live in their parents' basement than in the city of Boston. Since FTL is defined by demographic variables, many psychiatric conditions may lead to FTL. In a recent paper, Cato and al. Attempted to break down FTL and present it as a multidimensional phenomenon. I'm going to go over major elements. Biofactors. FTL shows some blood biomarkers such as low serum uric acid levels in men and lower high-density lipoprotein cholesterol levels in women. Sociocultural. These include cultures where interdependency with parents is high and cultures that are highly affected by IT technology. Psychological. Low self-esteem, shame. These are some of the traits that can cause individuals to shut off from society. Of course, these are also a function of culture and are greater in some cultures than others. Schizophrenia. Individuals who suffer from schizophrenia find it hard to work and study when not treated well. This is also true to individuals in prodromal state, the state that precedes schizophrenia. Autism. Adults who are on the autistic spectrum find it hard to communicate with others, leading to more problems in employment. Social anxiety. The anxiety in contact with others can lead to isolation. Some have considered FTL a direct outcome of social anxiety. However, evidence also showed that the two are not the same. PTSD and trauma. PTSD is known to drive people into isolation. Furthermore, individuals with PTSD at times find it hard to work and study. However, they also show other clear symptoms of anxiety, which are not always the case in FTL. Personality disorders, avoidant personality disorders, narcissistic personality disorders. Personality elements are probably a contributor, but there's way too little research in this field. Depression. Depressed individuals are also known to reduce social contact with others, an outcome that may be FTL-like behavior. But again, not all FTL report depression symptoms. There are many ways to study FTL, and we're interested in most of them. So, for example, you can study prevalence and therapeutic methods, or comorbidity with other pathologies. And what I'll be talking today is studying the predicting variables of FTL in adolescence. That is, what elements in adolescence can predict FTL later in life. If we want to measure variables at adolescence and see how they affect failure to launch at an older age, we need a longitudinal study. These studies measure data in several waves in the same population. For example, at ages 18, 21, 36. Since we do not know which individuals are going to develop FTL, we need very large samples. Right? As I said before, it's roughly 1 in 200, 1 in 100 adolescents that will become failure to launch. And this is a problem. Longitudinal studies are expensive, especially if they're big, and they're extremely time consuming. Who wants to wait 18 years to get a result? So one way to avoid these problems is to work with large sets of data that are already collected. And it has its advantages because you can get the data like this, but it also has its disadvantages because you cannot choose the questions that you want and you have to adapt yourself to the data. In the present study, we've used the EdHealth longitudinal database. It is a 5-wave study that started with 20,000 adolescents. Currently, participants are in their 40s. The first 2 waves were measured at grades 7 to 12 of the adolescents. There were 3 waves of data collection in adulthood. Wave 3 was sampled at ages 18 to 26, wave 4 at 24 to 32, and then wave 5 at 33 to 44. FTL was characterized at waves 3, 4, and 5. Individuals with FTL were living with their parents, not working, not in school or in a vocational training, not using substances apart from cannabis, did not have any intellectual disability, and were not physically or mentally disabled. So today I'll be showing you our preliminary results. We only analyzed wave 3 and 4 and only half of the data. As you can see, wave 3 has 3% of FTLs, and wave 4 is roughly 1% of the population, that is. When we look at the characterization, there were no major differences between individuals with FTL and without at ages 18 and 26. However, at ages 24 and 32, individuals with FTL were more commonly unmarried and male, who were less diagnosed than the general population with depression and anxiety. This may seem puzzling, but it's important to note that these individuals may also avoid doctor's visitations altogether, so they may not get any kind of diagnosis. To learn about the causes of FTL, we chose 2 analyses. First, we compared the FTL population to the rest of the sample separately in each wave and tested for differences in wave 1. Specifically, we tested how individuals with and without FTL differ in variables such as negative emotions, watching television, skipping school, friendships, how many friends they have, and romantic friendships. In the second analysis, we compared the FTL population to the rest of the sample separately for each wave
3 and 4 in either the following or preceding wave. Specifically, we tested how individuals with and without FTL, different variables such as symptoms of FTL and things like marriage, where they married more or married less.
Let's first consider the self-report measures taken from the adolescents themselves. I've highlighted significant results in the comparisons between the FTL group and the general population. In both waves, individuals with FTL watched more television, have shown more avoidance and some negative emotions. It seems that the younger individuals with FTL were also more socially anxious, had a general negative emotion, and used to skip school. Older individuals with FTL were less romantically involved and had poorer mental health. The study also included reports made by parents, and here we can see that in both waves, parents reported learning disabilities and less romantic involvement when compared to the general population. Furthermore, it is noteworthy that in self-report, individuals of both waves reported emotional and mental difficulties. However, these difficulties were noted only by the parents of the younger individuals with FTL.
As we look at the second analysis, we can observe the FTL trajectory. What happens to individual in wave 3 when they move to wave 4, and what happens when you compare between them and the rest of the population. So individuals with FTL are significantly more likely than the rest of the sample to depend on others as they grow older for living, work less than 10 hours a week, and never get married. In a similar sense, we can look at the older individuals with FTL status as young adults. Who were they as they were young? Individuals from wave 4 into wave 3. And we find that compared to the rest of the sample, these individuals are more dependent on others for accommodation, or were already more dependent on others for accommodation. They were working less hours a week, they were unmarried, and they did not go to college.
Another way to understand the trajectory is to follow it. Here, you can see what happened to individuals with FTL from wave 3 after 8 years at wave 4. First, more than half moved to a place of their own, whereas the remaining others either remained with their parent, moved in with others, or to halfway home. Of course, not all are in a better shape. We can say that little as 50% are in a good shape, living by themselves, working and or going to school. The reminders may be about the same in their independence or worse. For example, 10% of the sample began substance abuse. Importantly, about 5%, 7 individuals, who were FTL at wave 3, remained as FTL at wave 4. We can also ask, where did wave 4 individuals came from? Only 10 individuals were entirely independent when sampled at ages 18 to 26, while others were in different degrees of independence. However, 33% were already in a bad shape, including those who were FTL in wave 3.
Okay, for conclusion, first of all, FTL seems very prevalent. I mean, in this study, we had between a 1 to 3% ratio in the population, which would translate to somewhere between 500,000 to 1 million Americans with failure to launch. Furthermore, individuals who later become having FTL have shown as children more emotion problems and mental issues, less social relationships, they had less friends, platonic and romantic, they were less developed, at least romantically. They had more learning disabilities than their peers. And in older individuals with FTL, it also seemed that parental awareness of what's going on may be lower compared to the rest of the population. Importantly, FTL may be persistent, and having FTL may be associated with other negative outcomes.
As we consider the future of this study, we will complete the analysis of wave 5. And in addition, we began a new longitudinal study with another data source where we'll have much information about the family's economical situation, socioeconomical status, and see how it affects through generations on failure to launch. I want to end by saying thank you to Professor Lebovich for giving me the opportunity of studying this amazing field. Thank you.